Hey, Steve Magnante here at High-Octane Classics in Auburn, Massachusetts with a very special Pontiac Trans Am. This is a 1974 455 Super Duty, and the way we know it's a Super Duty is it has an X in the fifth spot at the very end, which is basically the Super Duty code. And as we can see on the top of the shaker hood, we see the term SD455. Now, SD stands for Super Duty, which was Pontiac's term for their race parts, which were sold either over the counter or in production cars starting out in 1961 and through 1963 when the racing ban was implemented. But for the early 1970s, 1973 and 74, the 455 went out with a bang. The Super Duty was a very special engine, special cylinder heads, special exhaust manifolds, special carburetor, special intake manifold. Intake and exhaust ports were different from base 455, let alone a 400, which were lesser engines in so many ways. Also 4-bolt mains and forged rods in every 455 Super Duty. Now these were very expensive engines. The option itself was quite a bit more than the basic 400 or 455 base motor. And in fact, there were 943 of these built in 1974, the second and final year for the Super Duty. We've got a great example of one here, low miles, numbers matching car with PHS documentation. It's the real deal, not a clone, and it's an X code in the VIN for sure, the real thing. And again, the shovel nose was new for 1974, we can see right here. Some people, well, it was a step backwards or step forward versus the beak and the recessed grills of 1970 through 73. But again, 74, the new shovel nose, and of course it hides the impact absorbing front bumper, which added about 100 pounds to the weight of the car front and rear, which, you know, kind of hurt performance a little bit, but these were great handling cars. And let's look at that 455 Super Duty engine and look at what makes it unique. Before we dive into what Super Duty 455 means, under that hood, which we see here, has the WW7 $55 optional Bird or Screaming Chicken or Phoenix Rising. That's what I call it, the Phoenix Rising. Not a Streaming Chicken, that's so derogatory, don't like it. But anyway, larger for 1974 than it would have been in 73. It's more loud in your face. But again, let's take a peek at that 455 Super Duty. And there she blows. Now there it is, very much stock, not been hot rodded at all, no aluminum intake. This is all factory stuff. And again, the heads on these things had different intake and exhaust ports than a basic 455 or 400 station wagon type engine. But something we see on this too is the fact that the Super Duty, the shaker, had an outside air intake from here, but it wasn't from under the hood or above the hood. This thing right here is a duct that feeds cool air from behind the headlight area into this tube here and into the air filter element. Now the thing of it is, in a moment we'll take a look at the actual opening to the Super Duty. It was not functional. In 73 and 74 they had a screw-on metal plate. Later years that would be molded shut as the Trans Am grew more into a disco mobile, a showpiece. But this is capable of high performance. And again, 4-bolt mains, forged rods, which were a rarity in Pontiac. They usually had the armor steel cast rods. This is good heavy-duty stuff. And here's the thing. Pontiac engineers said the Super Duty 455 gives the enthusiast the raw material to go all the way. Put a hotter cam in it, more compression, and, you know, dry sump oiling, believe it or not. These have provisions for dry sump oiling. These blocks are very unique. The forged rods are something I've not seen in a Pontiac since 1963 with the 421 Super Duty. So really special stuff. So Pontiac kind of went out from the muscle car era with a big bang with the Super Duty 455. Something also seen on these is the streamlined exhaust manifolds. Right here, you can see it here. If you look at that manifold, it looks kind of like a Ram Air 4-piece from a GTO from the early 70s, very early 70s, but you can see streamlined passages, and it's very different from the log manifold seen on the 455 or 400 base motors. So that's a special piece. And also something seen only on 455 Super Duties is the oil filler on the valve cover right there, the PCV valve. That's 455 Super Duty specific. There's even a decal here that says oil usage 30 weight oil, and here it is, all the correct markings on this. No chrome, no bling, no disco, nothing. This is very pure the way they were designed to be delivered. Now in total there were 943 of these built in 1974, the final year. 75 would bring catalytic converters, much lower compression, 210 horsepower. These had 290 horsepower, 290. And the year before this, 310 horsepower in 73 when they had a little more hotter cam, I believe. So about 290 net horsepower was right in there with any L82 small block Corvette. Pretty much the hottest thing on the road in 1974. Pretty cool piece. Let's look inside and see what we find there. 4-speed or automatic? Gotta know. And getting back to the shaker hood for just a second before we go inside the car, this is the Bubble, the iconic Trans Am shaker hood, which was, helped Pontiac sell tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Trans Ams. Again, only found on the Super Duty, or the Trans Am, I should say. But on the back side of these things, until 1973 and 72, there would have been a block-off plate right there. You could unscrew it if you wanted to, but the thing was, the federal government had drive-by noise standards at wide open throttle, and with the open element on the back, they didn't pass. So they would have had a metal plate that quieted the engine tone. So this is an aftermarket piece. Definitely somebody modified that. It's a mesh. It looks good, but it's not factory. That's okay. It helps the engine get cooler air in addition to the zip tube under the hood. We saw that a second ago. Okay, inside, 4-speed or automatic. Both were possible with the Super Duty 455. And there it is, the Turbo 400 heavy-duty 3-speed automatic, and this is a Buccaneer red car. It's kind of a weird one. According to Pontiac Historical Society, this may be the only 455 Super Duty with a red exterior, red carpet, red console, and black bucket seats. These are factory equipment right here, so it's kind of a unicorn. This was an optional thing, and very uncommonly seen. There you go, uncommonly seen. And also over here we see the word RTS. And that means not rapid transit system. It's not a Plymouth, but radial tuned suspension. And the Super Duty came standard with radial tires, GR70 15s. And this is the reminder here that you have a radial tuned suspension. And of course, radial tires are just coming onto the scene in the mid 70s, and they give a better handle than a bias ply or a belted type tire. So Pontiac very much ahead of the curve. Pontiac was basically GM's handling division, and the radial tuned suspension, the RTS, helped the Trans Am to stay ahead and keep up with Corvettes. Now the engine turn panel here is factory stuff, kind of cool. Kind of a nod to the old supercharged Duesenbergs from the 1920s, but a nice look. And again, the RTS radial tuned suspension next to the tachometer and between the speedometer. And at this point in time, this one has a 160 mile an hour speedometer, which is a little bit optimistic. You probably would get with the standard gears, you probably go 125, 130, don't get caught. But again, it has the tilt column, which is an option, and it is an air-conditioned car. Some people don't like Super Duties with AC, but the reality is people who drive these things like the AC. It's all factory air-conditioned, and this one even has the factory 8-track cassette player with the Doobie Brothers Stampede inside, ready to be enjoyed. The guys from the San Francisco Bay, the Doobie Brothers, they were the Hells Angels house band early on before they went easy listening, and Michael McDonald kind of entered the scene. What a fool believes. Anyway, great looking car inside, and let's go around to the back of the car and check out some more details. Another iconic Trans Am specific detail from 1970 through 1981, in addition to the shaker, excepting the turbo cars, which didn't have shakers in 1980 and 81. Anyway, but the duck spoiler, this thing right here, was pretty much standard fare on the Trans Am. Optional on the Formula, interestingly enough, and I believe basic Firebirds toward the end of the run could be had with this spoiler right here, but again, standard fare on the Trans Am. And it was aerodynamically designed to exert some degree of downforce on the rear tires at race speeds over 100 miles an hour or more than that, which actually helped to keep the rear of the car planted. And you gotta love the blacked out rear bumper correct here, Trans Am right there. And again, something seen for the last time in 1974 was the flat-ish backlight. For 1975, the curved window that most people associate with the Chevy Camaro entered the picture in 1975. But again, final year here for the not flat rear window, but slightly curved right here. Now underneath this trunk spoiler, what do we have? Let's take a peek. And before we open that, check the exhaust tips on this. They're basically very factory correct, chrome straight outs. The quad tips would arrive a year later, and a lot of people with the Blackbirds and stuff in the later 1970s like the 4 tips, which were a nod to the 1964 Pontiac GTO, the quad tips. But again, not seen here. This is correct. This is a factory presentation as this would have looked on the showroom floor back in 1974. So let's open the trunk, and here's the trunk key right here. Boing. And inside of here, there's the spare tire. It's a BF Goodrich radial. It's good for driving on, no problem. Here's a distributor that goes with the car, special distributor for the 455 Super Duty. And this paperwork in here is really eye-opening. This is the owner's manual for 1974, Firebird Esprit, Formula, and Trans Am. And this gives all the specifications and, proper care and feeding for your Pontiac Firebird, regardless of the specifications. And then inside of here also is 1974 Pontiac Emission Control System information and warranty. Now 1974 was the final year for no catalytic converters on Firebirds or Trans Ams or Pontiacs for that matter. They would arrive in 1975 and kind of begin the slide toward the smog era. And but here's the whole deal with the fuel evaporation. And here is consumer information here, kind of cool, from Firebird, Formula Esprit, and Trans Am. This is information on braking distances, which is something they had to have. And here's basically Esprit, Formula, and Trans Am, the number of lights or the number of feet it would take to stop from certain speeds and velocities. These are kind of cool right here. And high-speed pass right here, and limiting speed 80 miles an hour. So this is kind of cool. These are things that were in this car's glove box since it was built in Michigan. And a little bit more here, maintenance schedule right here. So it's nice to have the paperwork that goes with the car. The provenance assured and indicated really right here. Just how to properly care for your Trans Am Super Duty. And this end is one of 943 built in 1975, the final year for the Super Duty. Would fade away for 1975 and 76 and become just basically a glorified station wagon engine with a lot of torque, 310 foot-pounds I think it was, somewhere around there. But this is the last of the breed with 4-bolt mains, forged rods, and really a great example of the Super Duty in its final incarnation. A couple of different wheels were possible on your Trans Am. The base styled steel 5-spoke wheels, we see them here, they're 15 inches. They take a modern radial tire or a vintage radial from 1975, 76, the radial 2 in suspension. There's also, of course, the honeycomb wheel, which is available as an option, as an upgrade on the Trans Am, or the Formula for that matter. But again, great looking wheels, an icon of Pontiac history. Right here going all the way back to 1968, I believe, they had this type of a wheel on GTOs if you wanted to pay a little extra for it. But standard wheels on the Trans Am here, and the Formula could be had with a steel wheel with a baby moon hubcap, black or body color, so kind of cool. It could be even plainer than this. But again, the whole punchline on this thing is the SD455. So if you're sitting in at the stoplight in your Roadrunner 360 or your Camaro LT1 or LT, what did it come out, Type LT with the 352 barrel, that's going to get your attention because you better not choose this car off. It'll blow your doors off if it gets underway. So that's the story of this 1974 final year 455 Super Duty Trans Am numbers matching car. Beautiful automatic AC power brakes. It's a great example of the breed. If to learn more about this car, you can check it out on the High-Octane Classics website.